What's going on, guys? Hexadaze here. The release of Zenless Zone Zero is right around the corner, and to help you guys prepare, I wanted to make a video covering the pretty complex combat mechanics present in the final closed beta test. Zenless Zone Zero is an instance-based action RPG with hack-and-slash gameplay and a heavy focus on combat, akin to games like Genshin Impact 3rd and Punishing Gray Raven. So if you're coming from these games or from the recently released Wuthering Waves, the combat in ZZZ should be pretty easy to catch on to. For those of you coming from Genshin Impact, the combat in this game will definitely have some added complexity, which in my opinion is only a good thing. While there's certainly challenging endgame combat in Zenless Zone Zero, it's not going to be so difficult that the average player can't pick the game up and enjoy it. I'll be creating additional guides leading up to the launch of the game, so if you find this content helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please also note that all information in this video is based on CBT3. While I don't expect any significant changes to combat at launch, all information is subject to change. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. To start things off, I'd like to quickly run through the Zenless Zone Zero combat UI, as I found many aspects of the UI in the game as a whole not very intuitive. At the top left, you'll see your team members, including their health bar as the top green bar, and an energy bar as the lower blue bar. The red indicator on this bar represents the energy requirement to use your skill. Below this, you'll see the decibel rating, which represents party-wide energy for your ultimate skill. Enemies will display their own health bar in green, along with a DAZE bar underneath it. We'll cover DAZE a little later in this video. At the bottom right and from left to right, we have a basic attack button, a dash button, a skill button, a character switch button, and an ultimate button. In subsequent sections, we'll get into each of these into more detail, starting with basic attacks. This is your typical normal attack string in any action RPG. In Zenless Zone Zero, basic attacks can do either physical damage or elemental damage depending on the character's kit and playstyle. For example, Anbi's basic attack string performs 3 physical attacks followed by a final 4th electro attack, while Kaleda does 4 attacks, all dealing physical damage unless other conditions within her kit are met. Ellen has 2 different basic attack strings, one which deals 3 instances of physical damage and the other which deals 3 instances of ice damage, depending on whether she has flash freeze charges available. She gains these charges while performing basic attacks in her dashing state. Many characters also have a hold version of the basic attack that they can use to alter their typical attack or perform a unique combo. Every character's kit in this game is truly unique, and nobody's basic attack string is the same. Basic attacks will be your primary form of consistent damage in Zenless Zone Zero and will be a core part of your gameplay. Special attacks and EX special attacks are what would typically be referred to as skills in other action-based RPGs. In Zenless Zone Zero, you'll have 2 forms of your skill, known as a special attack and an EX special attack, with only the latter requiring energy to use. Special attacks are the weaker of the 2 forms and are generally not used frequently because of this. These skills do have some benefits, including things like the ability to stun enemies, increase damage resistance while in use, or elemental application, so they do see some use but are generally not recommended from what I can tell. EX special attacks are their much more powerful form and require energy to use. Energy is gained passively over time when characters are on the field. Agents will also gain energy while using their basic attacks, dodge counters, and dash attacks. Energy particles are also dropped from enemies when they're killed, which will grant the whole party energy. All EX special attacks for the characters available at launch are not created equal. Each character has different energy requirements for this attack, so some characters may be able to store sufficient energy to perform multiple consecutive special attacks, while some other characters can also spend different amounts of energy to extend their skill duration. For example, Corbin's EX special attack acts as a sort of combo with 3 consecutive strikes, each having their own energy cost, and similarly, Nicole can hold down her EX skill to perform a charge attack and consume energy at a fixed rate per second. Every character has one ultimate skill, which is their highest damage attack. ZZZ handles ultimate skills different from games like Genshin or Wuthering Waves, as the energy required to utilize an ultimate skill is shared party-wide. Because of this, you'll be selecting which character to use your ultimate ability on, and you'll likely be prioritizing certain characters' ultimate abilities in any given team. In Zenless Zone Zero, the energy for ultimate abilities is referred to as your decibel rating. You'll build up your decibel rating using nearly all of your attack types. Your ultimate is available once your decibel rating reaches 3000. Before we move into some of the evasive type maneuvers in Zenless Zone Zero, I did want to briefly mention core skills. Each character has a core passive that typically buffs a certain part of their attack, providing things like additional damage for Corbin's extended slash, additional daze for Kaleda's enhanced basic attack, or enhanced crit rate for Ellen's charged dash attack, which may prioritize the use of these abilities. Characters also gain additional passives when multiple characters of the same element type or faction type are in a party, which may further enhance how certain characters are played. Discussion of these things deserves separate videos, which I will be releasing over the next few weeks, so stay tuned for those. I will touch on the remaining core skills throughout the duration of this video. Characters have one of two primary ways to avoid taking damage in Zenless Zone Zero, which include dodges and switching characters. Dodges are exactly what they sound like. When you perform a dodge, your character will simply move quickly in a direction, which can be useful for positioning and avoiding damage. That said, when performing a normal dodge, characters are not invincible and can still take damage. The exception to this is referred to as a perfect dodge. When enemies perform an attack, they will briefly display a yellow or red indicator, which I'll refer to as a glint. Performing a dodge during this brief instance results in a perfect dodge. Perfect dodges let you iframe attacks, or in other words, make you invincible, and allow you to perform a dodge counter. Dodge counters are a special attack that can only be used following a perfect dodge by pressing the basic attack button quickly afterwards. These attacks do moderate damage. Dash attacks can be performed by normal attacking quickly after using a dash. These deal low damage and seem to only be useful on certain characters such as Ellen, whose kit is built around the use of dash attacks. The other primary way to avoid taking damage by exploiting the use of invincibility frames includes performing a defensive assist. In Zenless Zone Zero, switching between characters is done using the spacebar. When this is done during the attack animation of the enemy, a perfect assist will be performed where you will gain iframes. Perfect assists can be either defensive, dealing daze to the enemy, or evasive, slowing enemies down. Using a basic attack or special attack immediately after the assist will initiate an assist follow-up dealing moderate damage. Performing perfect assists consume what are referred to as assist points, shown as bars circling the character swap button. Assist points can be recharged by launching chain attacks, which we'll cover shortly, as well as ultimate abilities. Reactive assists are triggered when the character in combat gets knocked back. When this occurs, the character switch icon will flash, allowing you to swap in the next team member, who will perform an attack with low damage. Generally, I don't see this as a particularly useful skill, but they may eventually find their place. To wrap up this video, we'll discuss two types of debuffs that can be applied to enemies, the first of which is referred to as an attribute anomaly. Anomaly buildup refers to the repeated elemental application on an enemy, which results in a certain effect being applied based on the element type. There's not a meter showing elemental buildup as there is for energy, HP, and decibel rating, so tracking application is not as simple. There are 5 types of attribute anomalies, with one for each of the attribute types. Electric agents inflict shock. When agents are under this effect, being attacked intermittently triggers additional electric damage, and machine-type enemies can be interrupted. Physical agents inflict assault and flinch. Assault interrupts the enemy and deals massive physical damage, while flinch increases daze the target takes for a period of time. Ice agents inflict freeze and frostbite. Freeze prevents enemies from taking action for a period of time and triggers shatter at the end of the effect, dealing ice damage. Frostbite increases crit damage taken by the target for a period of time. Fire agents inflict burn. Burn deals continuous fire damage, and organic enemies can be interrupted while burned. And ether agents inflict corruption. Corruption causes additional ether damage when attacked, and inflicting corruption can interrupt energy type enemies. Finally, disorder is triggered when an anomaly of a different elemental type is inflicted while a prior elemental anomaly is still present, dealing massive damage before the new elemental anomaly takes over. In addition to anomalies, enemies can also be inflicted with something called daze. All types of attacks generate daze and add to the enemy's daze bar. Each attack has a unique daze multiplier, just like a damage multiplier. When the daze percentage reaches 100%, enemies enter a stun state. At this point, the daze bar starts to flash and gradually decreases over time. Damage dealt to enemies while dazed is increased to 150%. When enemies are in a dazed state, performing a heavy attack can trigger what is known as a chain attack, which we'll get into in a minute. Heavy attacks typically include things like special attacks, the last hit of a basic combo, chain attacks, and ultimate abilities. Depending on the type of enemy, a different number of chain attacks will be triggered. 1 for normal enemies, 2 for elite enemies, and 3 for boss enemies. When a chain attack is triggered, you'll enter a QuickTime event screen with combat being slowed down. You'll be able to choose between 2 characters to perform an attack. Chain attacks are very powerful and function as somewhat of a weaker ultimate skill. Damage is on par with EX special abilities in most cases. That sums up the major combat techniques in Zenless Zone Zero, but also only really scratches the surface of what's possible in this game. Actually, one of the more interesting mechanics in ZZZ is the ability for 2 characters to interact when in the same party, such as Kaleda and Ben, who can team up when paired on the same team to launch coordinated attacks. Each character's kit in this game is unique and complex on its own, so when paired with other characters, the possibilities only increase further. With the game in its infancy, there'll certainly be many new things to discover, and I expect the game to change considerably over time as new characters are added to the game. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful and you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'll be releasing several more videos leading up to the release of the game and plan to continue cover the game as long as it stays fun. I'll see you soon for the next video. Peace.